Welcome, tankers, to the Ground Nation Guide for War Thunder. In this episode, we'll be going over the Swedish tank tree. The full playlist is linked below.
The Swedish tech tree stands out as one of the most distinctive and unconventional in the game. Unlike the other nations, Sweden has not fought a major war in centuries, so their tank program was never given a high priority early on. Their first tanks were mostly imports or licensed designs from countries like Czechoslovakia and Germany, which were quite modern for their time but quickly outdated after World War II. To compensate, Sweden upgraded these vehicles with post-war APDS rounds and unusual design modifications, leading to tanks like the VII-VIII. Domestic production also began with vehicles like the S-tank, but much of the Swedish arsenal was filled with foreign imports from the British Centurion to the German Leopard 2, which remains in service today. In-game, the tree is split up into 5 different lines, those being the light tank and medium tank lines, the self-propelled anti-air and tank destroyer lines, as well as the Finnish armored sub-tree. As I just explained, Swedish tanks early on are pretty unorthodox, with certain gimmicks and designs you won't find easily. Most well-known modern tanks begin from rank 5 onwards, with stuff like the Stridsvagn 103 and the Stridsfordon 90. Everything in between is a very mixed bag, with some tanks that are downright unusable to some that are borderline overpowered, but we'll get to that later. As for the Finnish line, it consists entirely of foreign vehicles, either purchased or captured, with some great choices like the Panzer IV, T-34 and later on the T-72 and the Leopard 2. Overall, the tree is a pretty unique experience that contains a lot of interesting vehicles, both good and bad. At Tier 1, you'll find light tanks similar to all the other nations, but with a couple of quirks. The first light tank line contains the Stridsvagn M31 and the BT-42. The Stridsvagn is a classic low-tier light tank with a fast-firing small-caliber cannon and not much armor. While its mobility isn't anything amazing, it has a trick up its sleeve, which is getting access to post-war APDS shells. Sabo at this BR is practically unheard of, and it'll slice through even the heaviest enemies you'll face. That being said, it has pretty much no post-penetration damage to speak of, which makes it a pretty big noob trap. Stick with APHE and bring a handful of these shells in case you face heavies. The 15 tonnin rynnäkkötykkipanssarivaunu BT-42, on the other hand, is an absolute classic. It's a Finnish captured BT-7 with a comically large turret. Instead of the usual 45mm cannon, the 42 carries a British 114mm howitzer instead, which can obliterate anything it faces. Combine that with great mobility and you'll have an amazing meme vehicle. It has, however, a very slow turret rotation rate and a lengthy reload, so make sure to stay on the move and avoid enemy detection. In the second light tank line, we have the Stridsvagn M38 and 40L. Like the M31, these two are decent jacks of all trades, carrying the same 37mm Bofors cannon with a quick reload. These two are a bit lighter than the 31 though, giving them better mobility. The 40L has thicker frontal armor and better depression, but that's about it. Play them like any other light tank at this tier, but carry some APDS rounds just in case. The SPAA line features a single vehicle, that being the Panzervärnslavett-Wagen FM42. As is tradition with other low-tier anti-airs, the PV-LVV is pretty bad when it comes to shooting down aircraft, but can make quick work of enemy tanks. It has a good fire rate and has enough penetration to take care of ground vehicles, even from the front. With only 2 crew members and an exposed turret though, it can get destroyed in a matter of seconds, so do your best to avoid getting spotted. The tank destroyer line contains the Infanteriekanonwagen 72 and the Sturmartilleriwagen M43. These two funny looking tanks both carry 75mm cannons and have great gun depression angles, especially the IKV. The former is quite fast but has no armor to speak of, while the latter has a slightly less powerful gun but is better protected. They both play nearly the same though, with their playstyle being medium range sniping, so hide in some foliage and get to work. Lastly, for the Finnish line, we have the Vickers Mark E and the T-28. The Vickers is essentially a predecessor to the Soviet T-26, and as such, it's a pretty mediocre vehicle. Its main advantage is its 37mm cannon, but it's very slow and lightly armored. The T-28, meanwhile, is a land ship with 6 crew members, a 76mm cannon, and 3 machine guns. Like its Soviet counterpart, it has thin armor plates, but its large size and plentiful crew count lets it survive a lot of punishment. Play it as a support vehicle and stick to your allies. Tier 2 contains the first couple of medium tanks in the tree, as well as a couple of derp guns. In the light tank line we have the Stridsvagn M41 S2 and the Panzervärnskanonwagen 3. The Stridsvagn is a license-built Panzer 38T with the same 37mm Bofors cannon as the Tier 1 models. It's pretty much the same as the M40, just with slightly better armor and an extra crew member. As for the PVKV3, it's built on the same chassis as the Panzer 38, but with a 57mm anti-tank cannon. As you might expect, firepower is great for its battle rating, but its turret has pretty much no armor and it's a pretty tall vehicle. It doesn't have that great of a horizontal rotation rate either, so stay back and snipe enemies from a distance. The medium tank line features the Lago 1 and the Stridsvagn M42EH. The Lago is a slight upgrade to the Stridsvagn M40, with similarly good mobility and the same 37mm cannon, but with 2 more crew members and a more angled hull design. The Stridsvagn M42EH takes it a step further with a big ol' 75mm cannon that can slap nearly anything at its battle rating. Combined with its good mobility, it can move around the map and take enemies by surprise. Watch out for its lengthy reload though. If you're the one getting ambushed, it won't end well for you. In the anti-air line, we have the Panzerbandwagen 301 and the Luftvärn Sterrangdragbil M40. The Panzerbandwagen is an infantry fighting vehicle based on the hull of the Stridsvagn M41 with a 20mm autocannon on top. This is peak Swedish design right here, a 1960s IFV based on the hull of an interwar Czech design taken over by Germany and imported to Sweden. In any case, the 20mm has a decent fire rate and okay-ish penetration, but also a very long reload. The Luftvärn Sterrangdragbil, on the other hand, is similar to the French CCKW 353 with a 40mm Bofors cannon and a 6-wheeled truck design. The Bofors has great penetration for this battle rating, but its fire rate makes it difficult to hit enemy aircraft. Try both vehicles out, see which one you like best, and get to work. Lastly, for the tank destroyers, we have the Sturmartilleriepjäs FM43-44 and Sturmartilleriwagen M43 1946. Like its name suggests, the SPJ is a heavy artillery piece that carries a 150mm howitzer. Any tank it manages to hit will instantly turn to ash, but as with most derp guns, it has a very long reload, low muzzle velocity, and very limited turret rotation. The SAV is an upgrade to the 44 model with a 105mm cannon instead. It starts off with a somewhat mediocre AP shell, but once you unlock high explosive anti-tank, it plays like a smaller caliber Stormpjäs. Neither model has much armor to speak of, but their mobility is decent enough and they have great gun depression. Your main course of action should be to stick with your teammates and provide fire support, and then back away while you wait for your reload to finish. At tier 3 we have further developments of the previous tanks with bigger guns and the start of the Finnish 3. In the light tank line we have the Danish M24 and the Panzervärnskanonwagen 2. Like we've said many times, the Chaffee is a good ambusher that'll teach you the basics of mid-tier flanking. It has good mobility, a decent cannon, but pretty much no armor to speak of. Sneak around the enemy lines and take them out from their flanks. On the other hand, the Panzervärnskanonwagen 2 is built on the same superstructure as the 3, but with a much better 75mm cannon instead. At its battle rating, it can punch through nearly anything it faces, but it also has twice as slow a reload as its predecessor, and it still lacks any proper armor. Thankfully, it has really good optics, so stay away from the main action and snipe from afar. The medium tank line contains the Panzervärnskanonwagen 4 and the Stridsvagn M42 DT. The fourth iteration of the PVKV is basically a Stridsvagn M40 with a 57mm cannon. As you might have guessed, it has a much bigger turret, which has awful rotation rates and a lot more stopping power, but surprisingly, its reload rate is still pretty short. Its APDS shell gets you up to 180mm of penetration, which is crazy for this battle rating, but remember, only save it for when you face heavier opponents. The Stridsvagn M42 Delat Torn is an upgrade to the M42 EH with an improved model of the 75mm gun. The gun has both really good penetration as well as a very quick reload rate of only 4 seconds on its first stage ammo stowage. Tank is fairly nimble as well, which makes it a good pick for those close quarter battles. Neither tank has good armor though, pretty much anything will be able to take them out, so you should either stay behind your allies, try to ambush the enemy, or keep your distance. The anti-air line contains the L62 Anti-2. It's very similar to the Ostwind or AMX-13 DCA, with decent mobility, the same 40mm Bofors cannon as before, and no armor at all. Once again, the gun has a steep learning curve when using them against planes, but a single shot is usually enough to take them down. It's a menace against tanks though, if you unlock its final ammo modification. It gets APHE belts with enough penetration to deal with enemies from the sides. It can be a very effective multi-purpose vehicle in the right hands, but you have to know its limits. For the tank destroyer line, we have the Panzervärnskanonwagen M32 1946 and 1963, as well as the Infanteriekanonwagen 103. The two PVKVs are great for long-range sniping with powerful 75mm cannons and great optics. Their mobility is also decent, but their armor is not reliable. The two models are practically identical. The latter just gets access to an APDS shell and has a slightly worse engine. The IKV-103, on the other hand, is an assault gun with a 105mm cannon. Just like its predecessor, it's a very nimble vehicle with absolutely no armor to speak of. Its cannon can take care of practically anything, and once you unlock the heat FS, not even late war heavies will be safe from its wrath. Its post-pen damage isn't great though, so you should stick with heat most of the time. It's best suited for heavy fire support since it doesn't have great muzzle velocity and its optics aren't the best. Stick with your allies and blast anything in your path. Lastly, we have the Finnish line with the T-34, Panzer IV, PT-76 and the Comet 1. As you might expect, these four vehicles play identical to their original versions. The T-34 has bouncy armor but not the best firepower, and the Panzer IV is pretty much the opposite with a great cannon but not the best protection. The PT-76 completely ditches armor but gets a two-plane stabilizer and a heat FS shell later on. As for the Comet, it's much like the Panzer IV with better armor. It has a good cannon for its battle rating, but it can only carry solid shot ammunition. All in all, these four will definitely make a great addition to your lineups. The 3 takes a turn at tier 4 with somewhat modern designs instead of World War II upgrades. The light tank line contains the Panzerbandwagen 501, a BMP-1 bought from Germany after the Cold War. Stats-wise, the Panzerbandwagen is pretty much the same, but it lacks ATGMs and smoke grenades. Because of this, it sits at a much lower battle rating than the BMP, but its long-range capabilities are quite limited. Thankfully, its 73mm cannon still carries the powerful heat grenade shells, and it has a 6-second autoloader. Add the good mobility on top, and you have a solid ambusher and flanker. In the medium tank line we have the Stridswagen 74, probably one of the funniest looking tanks in the 3. It takes the hull of the Stridswagen M42 and mounts a massive turret on top, carrying a high velocity 75mm gun. The gun performs quite well with access to APHE and APDS if needed, and it has a reasonable reload rate as well as good gun depression. The biggest downside is the ancient hull that it uses. It definitely has the armor of a light tank, but not the mobility of one. With bad optics as well, your best option is to support your allies or do some medium range sniping. The SPAA line contains the LVKV-42 and the USH-204GK. The Luftvärnskanonwagen is a big step up from the L62, with double the fire rate, a more powerful variant of the 40mm Bofors, and more than double the turret traverse rate. Along with this, it also has a much better top speed. These upgrades make it a lot more competent in both the anti-air and anti-tank role, but it's still a Bofors cannon, so hitting air targets might still be a bit difficult. The Unimog SH-204 on the other hand is very similar to the Italian R3 T20. It can go up to 80 kilometers, 50 miles an hour, and carries a very similar 20mm autocannon. That being said, it does not perform well against tanks, and it only has 400 rounds of ammunition. It's pretty much only usable against aircraft, but you have to line up your shots well since you burn through it very quickly. For tank destroyers, we have the Bandkanon 1C. The Bandkanon is a pretty niche vehicle. It has bad mobility, no armor at all, and is a massive target. However, it also carries a 155mm howitzer with a 3-second autoloader, which is very fun to use. You can flatten the enemy lines in a matter of seconds, and they won't be able to do anything but watch. Like with any self-propelled artillery piece though, you have to aim in specific locations, otherwise you'll only take out their barrel and tracks. If you can manage all of that without getting spotted, it's a funny vehicle to use. Last but not least, we have the Finnish line with the T-34-85 and Charioteer Mark 7. While the armor on the T-34 is not as good as its predecessor, it gets a powerful 85mm cannon with great APHE shells. The Charioteer is in a similar situation, with pretty lackluster armor but carrying a deadly 20-pounder cannon. The APDS shell it fires can penetrate more than 380mm of armor, which is more than enough at this battle rating, but remember, its post-pen damage is non-existent. Both vehicles have decent enough mobility, so they're best used in the flanking and sniping roles. At tier 5 you'll find some wacky designs and a couple of imported vehicles. In the light tank line we have the IKV-91 and USH-405. The Infanteriekanonwagen 91 is a light sniper tank with great mobility and a powerful gun. Its optics aren't that great, but it gets a laser rangefinder and good heat FS rounds. Combined with a decent reload rate as well, you can be effective at long range, provided you stay on the move. The Unimog SH-405 on the other hand is more of a meme vehicle with a top speed of 73 km an hour or 45 miles an hour and two 81mm Oerlikon rocket launchers. It's similar to the Raketenautomat or R3 T106 as it can zoom around the map, take out multiple enemies in quick succession and relocate before they realize what's going on. The only downside is survivability. Its armor is paper thin and it only has 2 crew members. A single machine gun round can take it out, so you have to play carefully by flanking and ambushing while staying out of sight. From medium tanks, we have the Stridswagen 81, 101 and 103A. The Stridswagen 81 and 101 are license-built variants of the Centurion Mark III and Mark X respectively. As such, they don't have much mobility or the best armor, but their firepower is pretty good. The 81 carries the 20-pounder, while the 101 has the Royal Ordnance L7, and both of them have 2-plane stabilizers. If you stay back and snipe, you should be good to go. The Stridswagen 103 meanwhile is pretty much the poster child of the Swedish tank tree. The S-tank, also known as the doorstopper, the cheese wedge, and other such names, is one of the most unique and unorthodox tanks in the game due to the fact that the cannon can't move around. The entire tank needs to rotate in order to aim at a target. This makes aiming a bit difficult, but its firepower is very good, carrying the L7 cannon with a 4-second autoloader, a laser rangefinder, and amazing optics. As you might have noticed, the tank has a peculiar design which makes it nearly invisible over hills and bounces a lot of shots to the upper plate. However, if your transmission or engine gets taken out, you're pretty much hopeless, as the gun can't move whatsoever. Try to find a vantage point before the action starts or stick with your teammates, but avoid direct confrontations. In the anti-air line, we have the ZSU-57-2 and the VIII-40. Just like all the other variants, the ZSU is a great multi-purpose vehicle with good mobility and devastating firepower. It's rather difficult to hit aircraft, but against tanks, it can be a menace in the right hands. As for the Wageneldledning Automatkanon 40, it's sort of like the American Sergeant York, hence the nickname Sergeant Björk. It has two 40mm Bofors autocannons, as well as a search and tracking radar, which is a novelty at this battle rating. Unfortunately, it lacks fuse shells, which makes the anti-air role a bit harder, but it also has a decent AP belt that can work against the sides of tanks. Stick with your allies and shoot planes down. The tank destroyer line contains the Panzervern's Robotbandwagen 551. It's a pretty slow ATGM carrier that has no armor, but it does fire some pretty powerful tow missiles, especially the RB-55C variant. It's comparable to the M113, so don't expect anything crazy from it. Stay back and fling some missiles while staying out of sight. Lastly, for the finish line, we have the T-54. It's identical to the Soviet 1951 model, so you should know what to expect by this point. Its armor is decent against kinetic shells, but useless against HEATFS. Its firepower is pretty good, with a large selection of shells, and it has adequate mobility. It's a versatile medium tank, so either support your allies, snipe from medium range, or anything in between. Tier 6 contains further upgrades to the vehicles we saw previously, as well as some new designs. In the light tank line, we have the CV90-105 TML, the IKV-91-105, CV90-30 Finn, and the Stridsfordon 9040B. The combat vehicle 90-105 is a competent light sniper with a powerful 105mm cannon, a laser rangefinder, and solid mobility. The lack of a stabilizer is a detriment, but with some smart maneuvering, you can be an effective flanker. The Infanteriekanonwagen is quite similar, but with a stabilized 105mm cannon. Compared to the old one, it can fire AP FSDS, but has a slightly longer reload. Aside from that, it's pretty much the same, being mobile but lightly armored, so you should know what to expect. The Combat Vehicle 90 and Stridsfordon 9040B, on the other hand, are infantry fighting vehicles. For firepower, the former carries a 30mm autocannon, while the latter has a 40mm, both of which can penetrate enemies from the sides. While they have good fire rate as well, their belts are not that big, so you'll have to reload after a handful of shots. Aside from that, they have thermals, decent top speeds, but not the best acceleration, and their armor is strong enough to stop machine gun rounds. Overall, they're pretty standard IFVs that are best used in supporting and ambushing roles, but head-on engagements are not advised. The medium tank line turns into the MBT line with the Stridswagen 104, 103C and 105. The 104 and 105 are modernized variants of the 101 with ERA packages at the front, laser rangefinders, better engines and access to APFSDS. Compared to the 104, the 105 has thermals, an even better engine and a Swedish variant of the DM63 Dart at the cost of a higher BR. Even with the extra horsepower, these two are still quite sluggish and their armor is definitely not up to scratch at this battle rating. Their firepower is pretty good though, so stick to long range sniping. As for the 103C, it's pretty much identical to the 103A, just with a better engine, access to darts and slat armor in the upper front plate. It retains all the up and downsides of the previous S-Tank, but you shouldn't rely on your armor at this increased battle rating. Try to find some hull down cover and snipe enemies from afar. In the SPAA line, we have the ITP-SV Leopard and LV-RBV-701. The Ilmatorjuntapanssarivaunu 90 combines the hull of the Leopard 2 with the turret of the Chieftain Marksman, which leads to a vehicle similar to the Flakpanzer Gepard. It has amazing mobility and the firepower is nothing to scoff at either, with dual 35mm autocannons, laser rangefinder and great optics, as well as a search and tracking radar. The same cannot be said for the Luftwaffen's Robotwagen 701, however. Its mobility is trash, it doesn't have a search radar, it doesn't have much vertical traverse, and the missiles it fires are very slow. At the very least, the missiles are beam riding, so they don't trigger rear warning radars. Besides that though, there's not much else to say about this thing, so either avoid it or suffer until you unlock the next anti-air vehicle. The tank destroyer line contains the UDES 33 and the PBV 302 Bill. The Underlagsgrupp Direkt-Eld Stridsfordon 33 is comparable to the Panzervärns Robotbandwagen 551 with the same ATGM launcher but with better mobility and a smaller size. This gives it an edge while flanking, but again, they're not that great all things considered. The Panzerbandwagen 302 is similar but with an interesting gimmick. Instead of regular ATGMs, it fires Bill top attack missiles. Besides that, it also has better mobility and is amphibious, but overall it's still an ATGM carrier, so you have to play conservatively. Lastly, for the finish line, we have the T55M and the T72M1. The M variant of the T55 is a modernized T55A with a laser rangefinder, smoke grenades and access to a modern APFSDS shell that performs much better against angled armor. Like its Soviet counterpart, it's a versatile vehicle that's best suited for sniping. As for the T72M1, it's an export variant of the T72A and as such, it has a low profile, great firepower, adequate protection and decent mobility. Its frontal plate is stronger than most tanks at this battle rating, but you shouldn't rely on it since a lot of guns can penetrate it. And it has some glaring weak spots. Like with the T55, you have a couple of playstyles to choose from, but sniping suits it best. Just watch out for the abysmal reverse speed and gun depression on both though. Finally, we reach ranks 7 and 8 with some of the best top tier vehicles in the entire game. In the light tank line, we have the Stridsfordon 9040C and the CV-90-120. The C variant of the Stridsfordon 9040 is a modernized version of the B model with an improved turret design and some more armor at the cost of slightly worse mobility. The new turret comes equipped with a better APFSDS round that has improved penetration and angled performance, which is definitely handy. Overall though, it plays pretty much the same, so you should flank or support your allies. The combat vehicle 90-120 on the other hand is built on the same chassis as the 90-105, but with a big 120mm cannon. Not only that, but it boasts a 5-second reload rate, great mobility and one of the best optics in the game, especially on its commander sights. If used in the right hands, it can mow down half the enemy team, but it's still built on an IFV hull, so armor is not its specialty. It's the pinnacle of light snipers, so zoom around, find a good vantage point, snipe some enemies and relocate often. In the main battle tank line, we have the Stridsvagn 121, 122A, 122B PLSS, and the 122B+. These vehicles are among the best modern tanks in the game, upgrading on German tanks that were already great and taking them a step further. The Stridsvagn 121 is an imported Leopard 2A4 with minimal differences, solid mobility, a 120mm cannon and limited protection. The 122A on the other hand is a 2A5 but with much better armor and a deadly APFSDS shell. Enemies who assume you're a Leopard will instinctively shoot the upper front plate, only to be blocked by glorious Swedish composite armor. The PLSS, or the panoramic low silhouette sight variant, is exactly the same, but with a retractable commander sight that has generation 3 thermals. By using the radar on-off button, you can extend the periscope and peek over hills, which can be handy in some cases. The 122B+ is a modernized 122 with additional armor plates on the sides. This makes the tank a bit slower, but adds some extra chemical energy protection. That being said, all three models have excellent mobility, firepower and armor, making them good all-rounders capable of a number of roles. Whether it's flanking, sniping, brawling or anything else, they can perform well if used properly, but make sure not to expose yourself too much. It still has a number of weak spots, like the gun breech or lower front plate, but with some map knowledge and good positioning, they can dominate any match they're in. The SPAA line contains the LVKV 9040C, Asrad R, ITO 90M and the LD 98. The Luftvärns Kanonwagen is a variant of the Stridsfordon 9040C, but with a search and tracking radar, improved vertical traverse and 2 extra crew members. It's quite literally the exact same besides that, still capable of carrying darts and all, but it loses access to the scout drone. It's not the best anti-air, but it makes for a decent replacement for the Stridsfordon. For an actual SPAA, we have the Advanced Short Range Air Defense System, or ASRAD for short. It carries the same missiles as the Luftvärn's Robotwagen, but with a search radar and much better vertical traverse, access to the Bolide missile with more range, a turret that can shoot 4 missiles at a time, and better mobility among others. It's pretty much just a massive upgrade over the 701, making it an actually competent self-propelled anti-air. The Ilmatorjuntaohjus 90M, meanwhile, is an overhaul. It carries the French Crotale missile system on a Finnish 6x6 APC. It's the exact same as in the French tree, so its missiles have good speed, pull and range, and the vehicle is decently fast when spaded. Lastly, we have the Eldenhet 98. Contrary to all the previous anti-airs in this tree, this one carries fire and forget heat-seeking missiles instead of radar-guided ones. On top of that, they can go up to Mach 3 and have great pull as well. The only downside is that the vehicle is quite awkward to maneuver since it has a trailer, and the missiles are vertically launched with only 12 kilometers of range. For aircraft within that distance though, you can easily take them down. The tank destroyer line turns into the IFV line with the Stridsfordon 9040 Bill and the combat vehicle 90 Mark IV. The Bill variant of the Stridsfordon is the same as the 9040B, but with the Bill overfly top attack missiles we saw on the Panzerbandwagen 302. Combined with the new commander sights, these missiles give it a well-needed boost in firepower, allowing it to engage enemies from the front. If you find a hull-down spot, you can snipe enemies with the Bills and finish them off with your main gun. As for the combat vehicle 90 Mark IV, it's pretty similar to the 9030 Finn, but with Spike 280 GMs. Like we've said previously, the Spikes are tandem charged top attack missiles that can be effective when they work, but they're not very consistent. Other than that, it's your run-of-the-mill CV90, but at a higher BR, so the 30mm autocannon will struggle a bit more. Try to stick with your allies or flank the enemy. And lastly, for the finish line, we have the Leopard 2A4 and 2A6. These two German imports are exactly the same as their original counterparts, meaning they have great mobility, firepower and adequate armor. They're definitely good tanks, but there's no real point using them when the Stridsvagn 122s are just simply better. If you have an empty slot in your lineup, you could bring them out, but I don't think it's worth it, to be honest. Now we arrive at the conclusion with the pros and cons to kick it off. Because of their post-war modernization program, Swedish tanks get access to APDS shells extremely early on. Even though their guns are not the most powerful, they can slice through pretty much anything they face thanks to these discarding sabos. Like I said though, this is a very common noob trap, since the shells don't deal any post-penetration damage, but it's very handy against heavy tanks and such. Aside from the Swedish tanks, the Finnish line contains some of the best tanks from the German and Soviet threes, with the Panzer IV, T-34 and their later top tier vehicles like the T-72 and Leopard 2 as well. One of the biggest cons of the three is the lack of armor overall. Pretty much every Swedish tank is a glass cannon, with the exception of a very small handful. Enemies will be able to take these tanks out with minimal effort, so you have to make an effort to stay out of sight and keep moving. Another con is the stock armor piercing shells until rank 4. While pretty much all of them can carry APHE, you'll be stuck with solid shot until you unlock a couple modifications, which can be a bit of a struggle, especially since the guns aren't very powerful early on. Now we have the rankings, starting with playstyles. Swedish tanks are meant for hit and run tactics, so it makes sense that sniping and flanking are what they are good at. Supporting is also quite viable, but brawling is not much of an option until top tier, that is. As for the ranks, it's a pretty wild ride. Tier 1 is quite solid, tier 2 not so much, while tier 3 has some pretty exceptional vehicles. The cycle continues, with tier 4 being not amazing, but the rest of the ranks are solid, with some of the best top tier vehicles in the game at the end. As for close air support, the Swedish 3 is extremely limited, with your only options being large tactical bombers until tier 4. There is a silver lining at the top though, with the Viggens and Gripens. Anti-air isn't much better either, with the early stuff being lackluster and only getting good at the higher tiers. While there are some decent vehicles like the L62 and the ZSU-57, they're a lot better at anti-tank work rather than shooting down aircraft. And finally, we have the question for the ages. Should you play the Swedish tank tree? If you're a beginner, it's not a great choice, I don't think. While experienced players can make use of the various quirks in the tree, beginners will have a hard time without proper knowledge of maps and the enemy weak spots. If you are looking for a new nation to grind though, it's a solid choice. Getting APDS from the get-go is definitely a treat, and the tree contains some very interesting and unique tanks to try out. Not only that, but they also have some of the best top tier vehicles in the game as well. The only pitfall you'll face is the decent amount of copy-paste and some mediocre tiers, but the end reward is definitely worth it. And lastly, if you're looking to have some fun, it's a good choice as well. You can definitely have some great moments with some funny vehicles like the Delatorn, Ush 405 and the Bandkanon 1C. If you're looking for recommendations, SK suggests the T-34 1941 and the PVKV2. My own two favorites, however, are definitely the Stridswagen 74 with its high velocity 75 and the T-55M. They both are just perfectly situated within the tiers. Now, I've been your host tonight. My name is Jöbel van Kussenheim. You can find me on the SK Dogger Discord, which you should definitely check out.